Hi everyone, this is basically the epilogue to my playthrough of Harmony of Dissonance on stream. But in the stream I couldn't quite figure out most of the stuff, so there was a lot of things missing in that playthrough and we settled for the bad ending in the end. And so there's a good bunch of things that I had to do off stream. And I don't want to deny you all that information, so in case you just want to skip over this game altogether and you don't really care, then this is the catch up here for you. And I just want to give a summary of the story and what happened there and like my impressions and everything of the game. So as you can see here, I completed the game 200%, I got the good ending and everything. So I have a good idea now what the game has to offer, and this is what I want to go over here. And by the way, here this is the Konami logo at the beginning of the game. You want to just input the Konami code there to get the Simon mode in the boss rush. I'm not sure how you're supposed to figure that out, but yeah, it's kind of obvious when you know it, but I don't know how you get there. But yeah, either way, this is the gameplay running in the background here. I just show you a bit of boss rush with Simon mode. This is just bonus content. This is unrelated to the game, but I thought this gives you a bit of like the missing content that I couldn't show you. And in the meantime, I'm gonna talk over the main game. I should probably add that if you care for spoilers, you should not keep watching this here, because this is not a classic game review in that sense. It's more of a summary of my personal takeaway from this experience. And obviously I have to dig into spoiler territory for that reason. But I can send you off with one of my many unpopular opinions, and if I had to summarize this game in one sentence, I would say that Harmony of Dissonance is the better version of Symphony of the Night. Do with that what you will, but this was your last chance to click away. From now on I will just talk about whatever comes to my mind about this game without caring for any spoilers. So let's get this out of the way first. Why did I even come up with this comparison? It's quite simple, because Symphony of the Night and Harmony of Dissonance, both those games, they have a lot in common in like how they play and what they do with their story plots and whatever. So just the overall similarities, they make it very, I don't know, to me it feels like very close to each other. And if I were to choose which of the two I would prefer, then I would definitely go for this one here. So Harmony of Dissonance to me is the more compact version than Symphony of the Night, because like Symphony of the Night is just too overloaded and too clunky and too long, and I don't know, it's too big. And they're both Metroidvania games, so that is the overall issue that I have with both of them. And for that reason, it's probably, for me personally, it's probably the better choice to have a more small and compact version of that, other than like having to go around the castle forever and a day and never getting anywhere. And I mean, I had my dosage of that in this game as well, so I was wandering around the castle a lot, and like I got lost a lot, and I even got frustrated a lot already. I don't know, it's just the whole Metroidvania genre is just a bad choice of a game in general. Whenever you want to make a I don't know, like it's limited. You cannot do too much with this genre. It's just limiting the potential of what the game can bring. It's just what it is. I don't know, it's like a default limitation. You can't really, I don't know, I can't even argue about that. It's just, in this genre it's very hard to do something that feels meaningful and worth the playtime and everything. But yeah, that's about that comparison, and Harmony of Dissonance feels like a way less stretched game than the other one, and I like that a lot. Another unimportant part to me is the graphics, but the graphics I think in this game are very good. Like, I was blown away by the graphics here, it's crazy. I don't need that good graphics, like I can do with way less, but I saw like there was a hallway or something that had like 4 layers of background stuff or something, and like moving backgrounds and whatever, the moving clouds in the chapel and whatever, like that was crazy stuff. I was really blown away by the graphics of this game. But obviously graphics don't really matter if they don't contribute to the message and the story, so it's more of a bonus, which I think is the case here in this game. So let's finally move on to the stuff that does matter, which is the story. And by matter, I mean, is this game worth to be played at all or not? And the answer is a definitive yes, and this is basically the point of this video here, because I need to explain a lot about this. So the story is pretty simple and straightforward, and you can pretty much tell what's gonna happen anyway, so there's nothing too crazy going on about it. But the implications that it brings with it for the timeline and all the other games in the series, those are of significant importance. I would say we do a little recap of the story first, and then we go over the more details of what they actually mean for the greater scope. Alright, let's see if I can get this together without messing up too much. So the story begins even before the game starts, and there are 3 people. One is the main protagonist, Just Belmont, the guy that you play in the game. Then the second is his training partner Maxime. And the third is a girl named Lydie, which I assume is the girlfriend of Just. But they never really say it out loud in the game, but it's pretty much suggested at the ending that it's probably the girlfriend of Just. But the important part is that they all know each other since their childhood, and they're pretty close friends with each other, and so that is basically the setup. And then it is said that at the early age of 16, Just is getting the vampire killer and becoming the official Belmont of that time period. And on that day, his training partner Maxime is going on an expedition for training or something. And so he's going away for 2 years, or he was supposed to go longer, but then he came back after 2 years. So that means that Just is 18 years by then. And this is basically where the game starts off. So he comes back, Maxime comes back from the expedition preemptively, and he tells Just that Lydie was kidnapped there. And he's injured and wounded and whatever, and he comes back telling that Lydie is gone. And he supposedly knows like where the kidnappers went or something. And then the game basically starts there with Maxime telling you that from like just getting back, and then like dragging you to that place where he thinks that Lydie is going to be. And this is where the game starts now. Maxime guides you to a weird castle in the fog, and from there on he breaks down, and it's like up to you to check out what's up with that castle. And then you start out like exploring a bit, and you then find out that there's death in that castle. So you first encounter death there, the character death obviously, and that is already very suspicious. Like, why is there death in a weird castle? Like, that can only mean one thing, right? But the thing is that it's just right in between the 2 centuries that Dracula is supposed to come back. So it's just been 50 years since Simon defeated Dracula, so it cannot really be that Dracula is back, right? And that's kind of the fishy part. Why is there Dracula's castle when he's not supposed to be back? And this is the mystery we start out with, and I would say this is the main topic of the game anyway. So in a twist of events during the story, we reveal that it's in fact Maxime's castle that we are in, And it turns out that at the day where Just became the Belmont guy and got the vampire killer, and on that day it kinda struck Maxime that he was just a normal person, I guess. And he couldn't really deal with that feeling, or like he felt worthless, or something was going on with him that made him like feel less valued or something. And so he went for this expedition that he labeled a training expedition, but he actually went to look for the body remains of Dracula, the exact ones that Simon already used to rid himself from the curse, like resurrect Dracula, then killing him, and then therefore like getting rid of some curse or whatever. And since Maxime knew the story of his best friend's grandfather, he set out to find the body parts of Dracula and tried to pull the same trick that only the legendary Simon could pull off, but without being a Belmont and without the vampire killer. What an idiot, honestly. If he had used a single brain cell before doing this, then he would have figured that there's no way that this is gonna end well. But this was in fact actually his plan, so he wanted to purposely revive and beat Dracula as a non-Belmont so that the burden gets lifted from the Belmont, so that they are no longer quote-unquote cursed to hunt Dracula for all eternity. But there's a reason why it is that way, right? So that's what he didn't really consider in his plan, but yeah. That is his motivation in the story. Okay, so Maxime spent 2 years finding the body parts of Dracula, apparently guided by a mysterious force to find them, whoever that could belong to. And then once he found the remains of Dracula, the part of Maxime that had this desire to overcome the Belmonts and was jealous and I don't know, all the kind of bad feelings inside him, they got strengthened by the possession of the Dracula parts, and it was seemingly happening without the awareness of the normal Maxime, so this bad personality basically built up within himself and then split apart at some point, and then it took over when it was so strong that it had the strength to just like take over the person. And then once that happened, then the bad Maxime used the dark magic from the Dracula parts to spawn this castle from the fog. And since the castle is kind of based on the personality of its creator, it makes sense that in the case of Maxime, it has this kind of split personality involved in the creation. And this resulted in the double layer castle that we get to see in the game. So the entire setting and story of this game gives us an insight into the mind of a person that is controlled by the evil forces of Dracula. And this is extremely interesting for the other games, because this is not the first and not the last time that this happens in the series. In fact, it must have happened at least twice before the events of this game in the timeline. This entire idea gives a whole new perspective to the entire series, and I have not yet processed or analyzed all the other games. But let's not get derailed too much here and get on with this game first. All I'm saying is that this idea alone is invaluable for the understanding of the series, and it's totally worth for just that one thing alone to play this game here. But anyway, back to the story. So we had Maxime spawn this castle with the power of Dracula's remains. And as I said, I haven't really processed all the given information yet, so I might still be a bit confused over what's going on here. I'm not even sure if there's actually two castles or if it's just the same castle and we only get to see two sides of it or whatever. It's very confusing. Because we first run into Death at the beginning of the game when we enter the good part of the castle, and he seems to be unaware of the two castles at first. All he knows is that the castle is not run by Dracula but by some other person, and it's obvious that it must be the bad Maxime, but how can he detect the bad Maxime in the good castle? So I'm kinda thinking it's only one castle, and it's just that both souls of Maxime or whatever, they have like split dimensions or whatever is going on there. It's very weird. I haven't wrapped my head around this yet. But roughly speaking, let's just say there's two identical castles, both utilized for opposing intentions. On one side we have the evil Maxime, obviously spawning the castle to sacrifice Lydie, the girl, to resurrect Dracula again. And on the other side we have the good Maxime, using the castle as a hiding spot for Lydie to not get harmed by anything. And he even somehow managed to lose his memory about Lydie's location so that the evil side could not make use of that information. We could even theorize that the injuries that he had in the beginning are self-inflicted damage by maybe trying to smash his head or whatever to forget what he knows, at least temporarily. But either way, the point is that both sides are very out of sync and dissonant. And poetically enough, Death tries to bring back the harmony by merging the two sides back together, obviously in the favor of his preference. But this is roughly what the story is about, and this also brings us to the title, Harmony of Dissonance. That's exactly what the story is. And on that note, I also want to address the music, which is as outstanding as the entire setting of the game. And this one actually had me puzzled at first, because this is a weird case. It's like the music in this game is decent, let's say. It's not too bad, but it's not good. It's not, especially not Castlevania good. You know, it's illegal by law to have a Castlevania game without at least one banger track, right? So what the hell is going on here? Even the worst title, which people claim is The Adventure, even that has good music, which makes it part of the consistency of good music in the series. So why is it missing here? Well, the answer is as simple as genius, and it comes down to the understanding what we actually get to see in this game. What do all Castlevania games have in common that this game here does not? Castlevania, right? So obviously this game belongs to the series, but this is the first time ever we have the unique opportunity to play in a castle that is not Castlevania. It's not Dracula's castle. At least not yet. It was obviously supposed to become Dracula's castle at some point if it wasn't for Just stepping in. But throughout the entire game we only get to see the two dissonant castles, which confirm that it is still Maxime's castle and not Castlevania. And the same goes for the music. It feels like it's some distorted echo of a Castlevania music, but it's just off. And that makes perfect sense since it is not Castlevania. It makes so much sense. It feels like you can hear the two dissonant halves of the castle fighting each other and trying their hardest to not merge together into one to become Castlevania, the evil residence of Dracula. If you listen to those half-finished music loops for a longer time, it almost drives you insane. And this gives you a good taste what Maxime constantly goes through while you travel the castle and try to make sense of the situation. He tries so hard to not give in to the evil forces and then screw everything up in the end, and I just find that a very fitting way to show that to the player. And it also makes me think, do we all have some dissonance within ourselves? Are we truly in harmony, or is there a second castle that tries to eat up the other without us even knowing? I found the perspectives that this game opened up to be very unique in the series, and they also help a lot with the theorizing about the other games, such as how do all the instances of Dracula's castle come to be? Do they all have a similar backstory before we get to see them in their games? And how does Death play into all this? How does he know that there's someone using the Dracula parts to make a castle, but then he also does not know that it's someone else but Dracula, so he somewhat smells the castle, but it's not even Dracula's castle yet. So, this is so interesting. But yeah, I hope you can see the potential and why this game is absolutely worth it, even though I cannot really recommend the gameplay and the experience itself. It's more that the given information and connection and the idea itself is really valuable. and I can't see you get to that same idea without this game existing. And for that reason, I would say the game is totally worth to be played at least once. I'm sure there's more to be found in the details if you play this a couple more times or pay more attention to the little things. But overall, this is absolutely needed for the understanding of the entire series and the lore behind the individual games. So yeah, I'm positively surprised and I can recommend this, as weird as it sounds. It's still a metroidvania, so it can't be too great after all, but the given information that you can extract from this game at least makes up a bit for the struggle. And it enriches the entire series by the lore, so it is totally relevant to play this game. So that was my take on this game. There is so much more to be said about all the little details and characters and dialogues and everything. But I leave you to figure that out yourself when you play this. I just wanted to give you a more reflected impression than in my blind playthrough. And that was the whole point of this video. So thanks for checking this out. If you like this, then give it a like obviously and subscribe. And if you want to see more game analysis or digging into message stuff like this, then I can highly recommend you to check out my streams as well, because they are mostly meant to be made for that kind of stuff in the first place. And you even have the chance to ask me like specific things if you want to know anything. So I hope to see you there or in one of my other videos. Thanks again for sticking along. Until then, goodbye. They have a dedicated ending just for the secret Simon mode and boss rush. It's so crazy.